I, Amanda, 34 years old, was in the middle of closing a $30 million deal in Tokyo when I got the call that my grandfather had suffered a heart attack. 2 hours later, my childhood friend who worked at the hospital texted me, "Your grandpa is fine, routine checkup only." Then my CFO called, $4.2 million was missing from our company accounts. My mother had faked the emergency to empty the accounts while I was 6,000 miles away. She thought she'd destroy everything my grandfather built, but she didn't know I'd already set a plan in motion. Before I dive into this story, where are you watching from? Hit like and subscribe to join me on this journey of betrayal and justice. Trust me, you'll want to see how I turned the tables on my own mother. My grandfather, Harold Jenkins, was more than just family. He was my hero. After my father died in a car accident when I was only 4, Grandpa stepped in to raise me. My mother, Diana, couldn't handle the burden of motherhood, as she called it, and disappeared from my life shortly after the funeral. Grandpa never spoke badly about her, but I could see the disappointment in his eyes whenever her name came up. Grandpa wasn't just any ordinary man. He had built Jenkins Security Solutions from nothing but an idea and $5,000 in savings. He started the company in his garage in 1985, developing physical security systems. By the time I was in high school, JSS had evolved into a cutting-edge cybersecurity firm specializing in financial protection systems for mid-sized businesses. The irony that our own financial security would eventually be compromised isn't lost on me. I grew up surrounded by circuit boards, security panels, and later, complex coding projects. Grandpa never pushed me toward the family business, but I naturally gravitated toward it. I earned my degree in computer science with a specialization in cybersecurity from MIT, and despite Grandpa offering me a management position right away, I insisted on starting at entry level. "I want to earn my place," I told him. He smiled with pride when I said that. For 3 years, I worked my way up through every department: customer service, engineering, sales, and finally operations. By the time I turned 31, Grandpa had begun transferring significant responsibilities to me. "You understand both the technology and the people," he told me. "That's what this company needs to move forward." Then, out of nowhere, my mother reappeared in our lives. I was 32, hadn't seen her in nearly 28 years, and suddenly she was standing in our office lobby with a designer handbag and a story about wanting to reconnect. I was immediately suspicious. JSS had just been featured in Forbes as one of the fastest-growing security companies in America. The timing seemed too convenient. Grandpa, with his endless capacity for forgiveness, welcomed her back. "Everyone deserves a second chance, Amanda," he said when I expressed my concerns. "She's still your mother." I disagreed, but respected his decision. For his sake, I tried to be civil, even as she inserted herself more and more into family dinners and company events. The Tokyo opportunity came about after years of careful expansion planning. Japanese financial institutions were looking for American security expertise, and our proprietary encryption system was exactly what they needed. The potential $30 million contract with Tanaka Financial Group would double our company's annual revenue and open the Asian market to us. I spent 6 months preparing for this trip, learning basic Japanese, studying their business customs, perfecting our presentations. 2 weeks before my departure, I noticed something odd. My mother had started asking specific questions about our company structure and financial protocols. When I walked into Grandpa's office unexpectedly one evening, I found her at his computer. She claimed she was just checking her email, but I noticed she quickly closed several windows when I entered. "Grandpa, I think we should change your login credentials," I suggested the next day. "Just as a precaution." "Your mother was just helping me organize some old files," he replied, waving away my concern. "You're being paranoid, Amanda." Maybe I was. But in our business, paranoia often paid off. Grandpa's health had been declining gradually, nothing severe, but at 78, his energy wasn't what it used to be. The week before my Tokyo trip, he had a minor dizzy spell that sent him to the doctor. "It's nothing," he insisted. "Just need to adjust my blood pressure medication. You focus on Tokyo." I hesitated, but the preliminary meetings had already begun via video conference. The Tanaka team had specifically requested my presence for the final negotiations. Walking away now would likely kill the deal. "I'll be fine," Grandpa assured me. "Diana's here to help if I need anything." Those words would come back to haunt me. Before leaving for Tokyo, I did one thing that proved crucial. I updated our emergency protocol. JSS had a special contingency plan that allowed for rapid fund transfers in case of security breaches or business emergencies. Only 3 people had access: Grandpa, myself, and our Chief Financial Officer, Robert Wilson. The protocol required 2-factor authentication and approval from at least 2 of the 3 authorized individuals. I also set up a private alert system that would notify me of any unusual activity, regardless of who authorized it. Call it instinct or just good business practice, but that decision would eventually save our company. The 13-hour flight to Tokyo gave me time to review every detail of our proposal. Landing at Narita International Airport on a crisp October morning, I felt both exhausted and exhilarated. This was the opportunity of a lifetime for me and for the company Grandpa had built from nothing. I checked into the Park Hyatt Tokyo, the same hotel from Lost in Translation, and tried to shake off my jet lag with a strong cup of coffee while watching the sunrise over the city. I had exactly 3 hours before my first meeting with the Tanaka team. Little did I know that while I was preparing to secure our company's future, someone back home was actively working to destroy it. My first day of negotiations in Tokyo exceeded all expectations. The Tanaka Financial Group executives were impressed with our presentation, particularly the live demonstration of our security system detecting and neutralizing a simulated attack. Mr. Tanaka himself, a stoic man who rarely showed emotion according to our Japanese consultant, actually nodded appreciatively during the technical breakdown. "Jenkins-san, your system response time is exceptional," he said, using the honorific that our cultural consultant had explained was a sign of respect. "Our technical team would like to discuss integration possibilities tomorrow." We concluded the day with a traditional business dinner at an exclusive sushi restaurant in Ginza, where conversation moved from business to more personal topics, a sign in Japanese business culture that things were progressing well. By the time I returned to my hotel room at 11 p.m. Tokyo time, I felt confident we were on track. I was exhausted but exhilarated, reviewing my notes for the next day's technical discussions before finally preparing for bed. Then my phone rang. It was 11:42 p.m. in Tokyo, making it 9:42 a.m. back home. "Amanda?" My mother's voice was frantic with the sound of hospital noises in the background. "It's Grandpa. He's had a heart attack. It's bad, really bad." My blood ran cold. "What? What happened?" "He collapsed at the office. The ambulance brought him to Memorial Hospital. The doctors are with him now." Her voice broke with what sounded like genuine emotion. "They're saying they need to make decisions quickly about treatment options, but he's unconscious. They need family authorization." "Put his doctor on the phone," I demanded, already pulling up flight options on my laptop. "They're working on him right now," she said. "Amanda, you need to come home. I don't know what to do, and the doctors need decisions from next of kin. You have his medical power of attorney." She was right about that. After my father died, Grandpa had made sure all legal matters were properly arranged. I did have medical power of attorney. "I'll try to get the first flight out," I said, my mind racing between concern for Grandpa and the crucial negotiations scheduled for the next day. "But that's still at least 14 hours. Call Dr. Mitchell. He's Grandpa's primary physician. He should be consulted." Of course, my mother said, sounding relieved that I was taking charge. "I'll have him call you directly." After hanging up, I immediately called Mr. Yamamoto, our Japanese business consultant, explaining the family emergency. He was sympathetic but candid. "Jenkins-san, if you leave now, before the technical discussion and preliminary agreement, the Tanaka Group will likely view it as a lack of commitment. They may not resume negotiations." I was torn between family duty and business responsibility. Both were crucial, and both needed me right now. I made a difficult decision. I would stay for the morning technical discussion and preliminary agreement signing, then catch an afternoon flight. This would give us contractual momentum while still getting me home as quickly as possible. I called our family doctor, Dr. Mitchell, directly. He answered on the third ring. Dr. Mitchell, it's Amanda Jenkins. I'm calling about my grandfather. Yes, I heard he was admitted. They paged me about an hour ago, he said, but something in his tone seemed off. How serious is it? Mom said it was a heart attack. Well, they're running tests now. I'm actually heading to the hospital to see him myself. He paused. Did they confirm it was cardiac? His question sent a flicker of doubt through my mind. That's what my mother told me. She said it was serious and decisions needed to be made. Let me examine him and call you back, Dr. Mitchell said, his voice now holding a note of confusion that matched my growing unease. I spent the night alternating between preparing for the morning's technical presentation and waiting for updates. Dr. Mitchell never called back, which I assumed meant he was busy with Grandpa's treatment. I managed perhaps 2 hours of restless sleep before my 6 a.m. alarm. Despite my exhaustion and worry, the technical meeting went remarkably well. Our chief engineer, joining via video conference, answered all the detailed questions from Tanaka's security team. By noon Tokyo time, we had a handshake agreement and were preparing the preliminary paperwork. That's when my phone buzzed with a text message from Sarah Chin, my childhood friend who worked as a nurse at Memorial Hospital. Amanda, something weird is going on. Your grandpa is here for routine tests, not emergency. He's alert and fine. No heart issues detected. Why did your mom tell everyone it was an emergency? I stared at the message in confusion, then growing alarm. I immediately tried calling Grandpa's cell phone but got no answer. Then I called the hospital directly and asked to be connected to his room. Mr. Jenkins is currently having a stress test, the receptionist told me. He won't be available for another 30 minutes. A stress test? Not emergency cardiac care. No, ma'am. He was admitted for scheduled tests this morning. Routine procedure. As this information was sinking in, another call came through. Robert Wilson, our CFO. Amanda, we have a situation. His normally calm voice was tense. Someone attempted to initiate the emergency protocol transfers. The system flagged it because the authentication pattern was unusual. My stomach dropped. Was it Grandpa's credentials? Yes, but the biometric timing was off. You know how we built in that keystroke rhythm authentication? The pattern didn't match his usual typing cadence. The primary transfer went through, but the secondary transfers were automatically held for additional verification. How much? I asked, already dreading the answer. For $0.2 million from our main operating account. Transferred to an account we don't recognize. The room seemed to spin around me. My mother had faked a medical emergency to get me out of the way while she plundered the company accounts. And I had nearly fallen for it. Lock everything down, I ordered. Freeze all accounts, revoke all access credentials except yours and mine, and contact our banking partners directly. I quickly excused myself from the Tanaka meeting, explaining that a security situation at my company required immediate attention. Mr. Tanaka looked concerned, but nodded respectfully. Back in my hotel room, I accessed our security system remotely and began damage control. The private alert system I'd set up before leaving had captured screenshots of the access attempts, all from Grandpa's office computer, all at times when Sarah had confirmed he was at the hospital. I called Sarah back. Is my mother there at the hospital? No, she dropped your grandpa off this morning and said she had errands to run. She seemed in a hurry. Of course she was. She was busy stealing everything my grandfather had spent his life building. I managed to lock down the remaining accounts remotely, but the $4.2 million that had already been transferred was beyond immediate reach. Tracing the transfer showed it had already been moved again, split into multiple smaller transfers to different accounts. My mother had planned this meticulously, waiting for me to be literally on the other side of the world before making her move. The betrayal cut deep, not just of me, but of Grandpa who had welcomed her back with open arms. I booked the next flight to San Francisco, but it wouldn't leave until morning. That meant at least 24 more hours before I could be home to deal with this crisis face to face. In the meantime, I had a company to save, a grandfather to protect, and a mother to stop before she could disappear with the money that represented not just our business capital, but the legacy of a man who had given everything to build something meaningful. The 15 hours between discovering the theft and boarding my flight home were the most intense of my professional life. From my Tokyo hotel room, I orchestrated a comprehensive crisis response, running on adrenaline and room service coffee. First, I assembled an emergency conference call with our security team back in San Francisco. This is a Level 1 security breach, I told them, using our company's highest alert designation. We need full forensic tracking on those transfers. Marcus, our head of digital forensics, took charge of tracking the money trail. The initial $4.2 million went to a Wells Fargo account registered to a company called Horizon Ventures LLC, he reported. From there, it was split into 12 separate transfers to different banks, including 3 international transfers to banks in the Cayman Islands, Singapore, and Switzerland. Those are classic laundering destinations, I said. She's had this planned for a while. Next came the difficult call to the Tanaka Financial Group. I chose honesty within limits. Mr. Tanaka, I need to postpone tomorrow's final meeting, I explained. We've identified a security breach in our own systems that requires my immediate attention. As a security company, we must demonstrate that we handle our own vulnerabilities with the same rigor we promise our clients. There was a long pause before he responded. Jenkins-san, I appreciate your transparency. It is indeed concerning that a security company has experienced a breach, which is precisely why I must address it personally, I countered. We will provide a full briefing on the incident and our response once it's resolved. This will demonstrate the effectiveness of our incident response protocols, something every security system ultimately needs. My gamble worked. Mr. Tanaka agreed to reschedule in 2 weeks, though I could tell our position had weakened. Sleep was impossible. My body craved rest, but my mind raced with calculations, strategies, and the sickening sense of betrayal. I had to force myself to eat, knowing I needed the energy for what lay ahead. During those hours, I also maintained regular contact with Sarah at the hospital, who kept me updated on Grandpa's condition. The doctors are confused about why he was presented as an emergency case, she texted. His test results look good. Blood pressure is elevated, but that's to be expected given the stress. Does he know what's happening? I asked. No, your mother told the staff not to worry him about business matters while he's being tested. He thinks everything is fine. At least he was safe. I decided not to tell him about the theft until I could do so in person. No need to raise his blood pressure further while he was under medical supervision. After booking the first available flight home, a 6 a.m. departure that would get me to San Francisco by 10 a.m. local time the next day, I continued working with our team through the night. By dawn, we had implemented emergency protocols to preserve our remaining assets and operational capacity. The flight home was torturous. 13 hours with spotty airplane Wi-Fi, unable to take decisive action while the situation continued to evolve. I drafted contingency plans, prepared talking points for the staff and key clients, and tried to predict my mother's next moves. When we finally landed at SFO, I turned on my phone to find a flurry of messages. The most urgent was from Robert. Your mother tried to access the backup accounts this morning. Blocked per your instructions. She seemed angry when I told her all transactions require your approval now. So she was still in town. That was something. I went straight from the airport to Memorial Hospital. Grandpa was sitting up in bed, looking annoyed at being kept there and completely unaware of the chaos unfolding around his company. Amanda, what are you doing here? You're supposed to be in Tokyo closing the Tanaka deal, he said when I walked in. I sat beside him and took his hand. Grandpa, there's something I need to tell you. Before I could continue, the door opened and my mother walked in. She froze when she saw me. Amanda, I thought you were in Japan until next week, she said, her surprise quickly masked by a concerned expression. I was just coming to check on Dad. Save it, I said coldly. I know what you did. Her face hardened, the caring daughter act vanishing instantly. I don't know what you're talking about. I pulled out my tablet and showed her the security logs with her access timestamps, the transfer authorizations, and the recording from the office security camera showing her at Grandpa's computer during the exact times the transfers were initiated. You faked a medical emergency to get me out of the way while you stole $4.2 million from the company. Did you think I wouldn't find out? That I wouldn't have safeguards in place? Grandpa looked between us in confusion. What is she talking about, Diana? For a moment, my mother seemed ready to continue denying everything. Then, seeing the evidence, her demeanor changed completely. He always loved you more, she spat, her voice filled with venom. His precious granddaughter. I was nothing but a disappointment to him. This company should have been half mine, I'm his daughter. You abandoned your own child, Grandpa said quietly, the color draining from his face as he realized what was happening. You walked away for 28 years, Diana. And now you've stolen from us. I took what I deserved, she said defiantly. What I should have inherited. I called hospital security, but by the time they arrived, my mother had stormed out. I immediately notified our legal team about the confrontation and admission. The rest of the day was a blur of emergency meetings. First with the executive team at JSS, where I laid out what had happened and our initial response. Then with our legal team, who painted a challenging picture. The problem is that your mother was an authorized user on some of the accounts, explained Vivian, our chief counsel. She had legitimate access granted by her grandfather. That complicates the criminal case and the recovery process. What about the fake medical emergency? The deliberate attempt to get me out of the country? That shows criminal intent, I argued. Yes, and that will help us. But the bank's position is that they executed transfers requested by an authorized user. Their liability is limited. The financial assessment was equally grim. The $4.2 million represented nearly 40% of our operating capital. We had payroll coming up in 10 days, vendor payments due, and the Tanaka contract now in jeopardy. If we can't recover the money quickly, we'll need to secure emergency financing, Robert explained. But that will take time, and with this situation, lenders will be hesitant. When I finally returned to Grandpa's hospital room that evening, he looked like he had aged 10 years in a single day. I was a fool, Amanda, he said, his voice breaking. I wanted so badly to believe she had changed. That my daughter had finally come back to me for the right reasons. We both wanted to believe that, I said, taking his hand. This isn't your fault. The company, can it survive this? Yes, I said with more confidence than I felt. I'll make sure of it. But alone in my apartment that night, with the adrenaline finally wearing off and 48 hours of minimal sleep catching up to me, I broke down. I sat on my kitchen floor, sobbing uncontrollably at the magnitude of what had happened. My own mother had not only betrayed me and Grandpa, but had put at risk the livelihoods of our 126 employees. And it was partly my fault. I had suspected something but hadn't acted decisively enough. That moment of weakness lasted exactly 20 minutes. Then I washed my face, made the strongest cup of coffee possible, and got back to work. I had a company to save and a family legacy to protect. And somewhere out there, my mother was counting on me to fail. She had no idea who she was up against. The next morning, Grandpa signed papers temporarily transferring full executive authority to me. Though the doctors had cleared him medically, the emotional blow had taken a toll. You've been preparing for this for years, he told me. Just not under these circumstances. My first act as interim CEO was to assemble what I called our Recovery Task Force, a small group of our most trusted and skilled team members. The conference room became our war room, with secure servers, dedicated phone lines, and walls covered in flowcharts tracking both our strategy and the money trail. We have 3 priorities, I told the team. First, track and recover the stolen funds. Second, ensure business continuity and meet all financial obligations. Third, rebuild our security to prevent any further attempts. Marcus from Digital Forensics had made a breakthrough overnight. We've identified a pattern in the transfer methodology, he explained, pointing to his screen. These aren't amateur moves. They follow specific laundering techniques used by financial professionals. My mother doesn't have that expertise, I said, thinking out loud. She must have had help. That's when Robert, our CFO, made a connection. Your stepfather, what did he do for a living before they divorced? The question hit me like a thunderbolt. My mother had briefly been married to a man named James Carver when I was a toddler. I barely remembered him, but Grandpa had mentioned once that he worked in banking. He was in financial services, I recalled. Could he be involved? A quick background check confirmed our suspicion. James Carver now worked as a consultant for high-net-worth individuals on asset protection strategies, often a euphemism for hiding money from taxes or legal judgments. They've been in contact, Marcus confirmed after checking my mother's phone records, which we had legal access to as part of our company investigation. Multiple calls in the weeks before the theft, including a 47-minute call the night before your Tokyo trip. This was the breakthrough we needed. Understanding who we were up against helped us predict their next moves. James would know all the standard techniques for hiding money, but he'd also know the standard techniques for tracking it. We needed to be smarter. While the forensic team continued tracing the money, I focused on keeping the company afloat. Our immediate cash flow problem was critical. We had enough reserves for current operations, but not enough to make the upcoming payroll and maintain all projects. I made a decision that Grandpa might have considered reckless, but necessary. I put up my own assets as collateral. My condo, my investment portfolio, even my 401k, everything went on the line to secure emergency financing for the company. You don't have to do this, Grandpa protested when he found out. We could scale back operations temporarily. And lose our momentum? Alert the entire industry to our vulnerability? No way, I insisted. I believe in what we've built. This is an investment in our future. The next challenge was the Tanaka deal. They had sent a formal inquiry about our security incident, clearly reconsidering the partnership. Rather than hide behind vague corporate speak, I opted for controlled transparency. I requested a video conference with Mr. Tanaka himself. We experienced a targeted attack from an insider with authorized access, I explained, without revealing it was my own mother. We've contained the breach, implemented enhanced security protocols, and are pursuing full recovery of the affected assets. This incident has actually allowed us to demonstrate our incident response capabilities, the very service you're considering us for. It was a gamble, but it worked. Mr. Tanaka appreciated the honesty and the demonstration of our recovery processes. He agreed to proceed with the deal, though with additional security verification steps. 5 days into our crisis, we had our first real victory. Marcus burst into my office, laptop in hand. We found the first shell company. Horizon Ventures LLC is registered to a P.O. box in Nevada, but we traced the formation paperwork to a particular IP address, one that's accessed James Carver's banking portal multiple times. It wasn't enough to recover the money yet, but it confirmed we were on the right track. More importantly, it gave us the first piece of hard evidence connecting James to the theft. Our legal team advised against going to the police immediately. If we file charges now, they'll freeze everything, including our own investigation, Vivian explained. We'll lose control of the process, and recovery could take years. Instead, we continued our parallel strategy, legal preparation alongside our own recovery efforts. Grandpa was released from the hospital and insisted on coming to the office. Though I worried about his health, having him there boosted company morale. Employees saw that the Jenkins family was fighting back, not running away. In his first address to the staff since the incident, Grandpa was characteristically straightforward. Someone tried to steal our future, he told them. They failed. Because this company isn't just about money. It's about the people in this room and the trust we've built with our clients. 8 days into the crisis, another key piece fell into place. One of our security analysts who monitored social media for threats discovered a recent Instagram post from a user named FreeSpirit2023. The photo showed a tropical beach sunset with a caption about new beginnings. The account was private, but the profile picture was unmistakable despite the sunglasses and new hair color. It was my mother. Using some technical measures I'd rather not detail, we gained access to the account's metadata. The most recent posts had location data embedded. She was in Puerto Rico, a U.S. territory with certain tax advantages for residents. More crucially, several direct messages revealed her plans to take a private charter to the Cayman Islands in 3 days, likely to access one of the accounts where the stolen funds had been transferred. We now had a timeline to work with. 72 hours to track as much money as possible and prepare our legal countermeasures. I developed a 2-track strategy. The first track was legal, preparing court filings for the moment we had enough evidence to move. The second was operational, rebuilding our company's financial foundation regardless of the recovery outcome. Just when I thought we had a clear direction, an unexpected ally emerged. My assistant informed me that Linda Powell was in the lobby asking to see me. The name was immediately familiar. Linda had been my mother's best friend years ago, before I was even born. "I saw Diana last week," Linda said after I invited her into my office. She was boasting about a big score and how she was finally getting what she deserved from your grandfather. Linda looked uncomfortable but determined. "I didn't know what she meant until I saw your grandfather at the hospital. A nurse mentioned there had been some confusion about his condition. Then I heard rumors about financial problems at the company." She reached into her purse and pulled out a flash drive. "Diana asked me to hold this for her. Said it was insurance. I didn't look at what's on it, but I think you should have it." The flash drive contained what we later confirmed were copies of communications between my mother and James, discussing their plan in detail. It also contained account numbers for several of the destination accounts for the stolen funds. This was exactly the evidence we needed, but the victory was short-lived. That evening, we discovered that James had initiated transfers from the accounts we were monitoring, moving the funds further into the labyrinth of offshore banking. The cat-and-mouse game was intensifying, and we were running out of time. Armed with the new evidence from Linda's flash drive, our legal team moved quickly, filing for emergency court orders to freeze the accounts we'd identified. By midnight, we had secured the first round of freezing orders, potentially locking down about $1.2 million of the stolen funds. I should have felt encouraged, but experience had taught me that this fight was far from over. My instincts proved correct when I arrived at the office the next morning to find Robert waiting with grim news. "The Tanaka Group is getting cold feet," he said, handing me an email. "They're asking for an immediate conference call to discuss recent developments." The email was diplomatic but clear. Rumors about JSS's financial stability had reached Tokyo. Someone was talking, and it wasn't just idle gossip. They're specifically asking about our ability to fulfill the contract requirements given our current situation, Robert added. They know details they shouldn't know. The Tanaka call was tense but manageable. I provided enough reassurance to keep them from canceling outright, but they requested a 1-week postponement of the final contract signing, time we desperately needed anyway, but also time during which they could be courted by competitors. No sooner had I ended that call when Marcus knocked on my door. "We've got journalists calling." Someone tipped off the San Francisco Business Chronicle about financial irregularities at JSS. The press leak was clearly strategic, designed to destabilize us further by frightening clients and partners. I authorized our communications team to issue a statement acknowledging an investigation into unauthorized account access, but emphasizing that operations continued normally. By mid-afternoon, the external pressure was compounded by internal strain. Department heads reported that staff were growing anxious, picking up on the unusual activities and closed-door meetings. The engineering team is getting LinkedIn messages from recruiters at Sentinel Security, our HR director informed me. They're specifically targeting our top talent with offers 20% above market rate. Sentinel was our biggest competitor, known for aggressive tactics. The timing was too perfect to be coincidental. I called an all-hands meeting for 4 p.m., knowing transparency, within limits, was our best defense against internal collapse. "Yes, we're facing a challenge," I told our assembled staff. "A significant unauthorized transfer was made from our accounts last week. We've identified the responsible parties and are in the process of recovery." I didn't mention that the responsible party was my mother. That was still being kept to a need-to-know circle. "Your jobs are secure," I continued. "We have implemented financial contingency plans that ensure all operations, including payroll, will continue without interruption." What we need from each of you is to maintain focus on delivering excellent service to our clients. The meeting seemed to calm immediate fears, but I knew rumors would continue to circulate. Back in the war room, a new problem emerged. While reviewing server logs, our security team discovered that someone had accessed our main backup storage and deleted several key databases, including records that could help trace the stolen funds. The deletion was executed using your grandfather's credentials, the security lead explained. But the access pattern suggests it wasn't him. My mother again. But the timing was suspicious. This had happened this morning, days after we'd revoked all her known access. She has additional credentials we don't know about, I realized. Or she's working with someone inside the company. The possibility of an internal accomplice was disturbing, but had to be considered. I authorized a full access audit across all systems, looking for unusual patterns that might identify a mole. That evening, returning to my condo after another 16-hour day, I found my front door slightly ajar. Heart pounding, I called building security before entering. We found my place had been thoroughly searched, and my personal laptop was missing. The invasion of my home hit me harder than I expected. This wasn't just business anymore, it was personal intimidation. The police took a report, but I knew who was behind it. My mother was escalating, trying to frighten me into backing down. The next morning brought another blow. Grandpa suffered a minor arrhythmia, likely stress-induced, and was back in the hospital for observation. The doctors weren't overly concerned, but they recommended minimizing his involvement in stressful situations. You can't tell him about any of this, I instructed our team. No updates about the investigation or recovery unless they're positive. Our legal strategy hit complications as well. The judge overseeing our emergency petitions requested additional evidence before extending the freezing orders to international accounts. We need direct proof linking these specific accounts to the stolen funds, Vivian explained. The circumstantial connections aren't enough for international jurisdiction. Then came perhaps the most dangerous development yet. While reviewing company records for evidence, our accounting team discovered something troubling. My mother had been laying groundwork to frame me for the embezzlement. There are altered records showing you authorizing unusual transfers over the past 6 months, the head accountant showed me. They're forgeries, but convincing ones. If someone wasn't looking closely, it would appear you'd been siphoning funds for personal use. The setup was clever. If I went to the authorities now, there was a risk they might focus their investigation on me rather than my mother, especially given her head start in controlling the narrative. By the end of the week, pressure was mounting from all sides. 3 board members called an emergency meeting, suggesting I step down temporarily until the situation stabilizes. The perception of leadership continuity is crucial right now, I countered, refusing to entertain the idea. Any change would signal weakness to the market and our competitors. I won that battle, but barely. 2 of the 3 board members remained unconvinced, but agreed to give me another week to show progress. Our competitors sensed blood in the water. Sentinel Security reached out to 2 of our largest clients, offering steep discounts to switch providers, given the uncertainty at JSS. The personal toll was mounting as well. I was sleeping maybe 3 hours a night, existing on coffee and protein bars grabbed between crisis meetings. My normally immaculate appearance was showing signs of strain. I caught sight of myself in a bathroom mirror one afternoon and barely recognized the exhausted woman staring back. The final blow came when a former family friend, someone Grandpa and I had trusted for years, gave an anonymous tip to an industry blog about internal discord at JSS. The details were specific enough that they could only have come from someone with inside knowledge. That night, alone in my office at 2 a.m., I faced my darkest moment. The company was under siege from all sides. My grandfather was in the hospital. My mother and her accomplice seemed to be one step ahead at every turn. And now, people we had trusted were turning against us. For a brief, shameful moment, I considered giving up. Reaching out to my mother to negotiate some kind of settlement that would at least save the company, even if it meant she escaped justice. I was staring at that thought when my gaze fell on a framed photo on my desk. It showed Grandpa and me at my college graduation, both of us beaming with pride. He had sacrificed so much to raise me, to build this company, to create something meaningful. I straightened my shoulders and got back to work. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about legacy, justice, and showing the world and myself what Jenkinses were made of. The path forward wasn't clear yet, but I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I wasn't going to let my mother win. I woke up on my office couch just after 6 a.m., my mind unusually clear despite the minimal sleep. Something had been nagging at me subconsciously, and in that liminal state between sleep and wakefulness, it suddenly crystallized. We'd been approaching this all wrong. I called an emergency meeting of our core team for 7:30 a.m., using the early hour to ensure privacy. When they assembled, bleary-eyed but committed, I laid out my realization. We've been chasing the money, but the money isn't the real vulnerability in their plan, I explained. It's my mother herself. She's not a financial expert. She's relying entirely on James for the technical aspects of this theft. Marcus caught on immediately. So if we can create doubt between them. Exactly. Their partnership is the weak link. And there's something else. My mother has always had one critical weakness: impatience. She wants quick results and gets careless when frustrated. This insight led to a complete strategy overhaul. Rather than trying to track and freeze every account in their laundering chain, a nearly impossible task given international banking limitations, we would focus on disrupting their partnership and forcing mistakes. Midway through our strategic session, I received an unexpected call from Grandpa, who had been released from the hospital again. "I need to show you something," he said. "Something I should have shown you years ago." At his house that afternoon, Grandpa unlocked a hidden wall safe I hadn't known existed and removed a folder of old documents. "When your mother left after your father died, it wasn't just about being unable to handle motherhood," he explained, his voice heavy with old pain. "She tried to take control of your father's life insurance money that was designated for your future." The documents detailed a legal battle I'd never known about, my grandfather fighting to protect my inheritance from my mother's attempts to claim it for herself. She's done this before, I realized. This isn't a new behavior. No, it's not. And there's something else you should know. The original company, before it became JSS, was co-founded by your father and me. When he died, your mother tried to claim his share despite having no knowledge or interest in the business. This historical context wasn't just emotionally significant, it provided legal precedent for her pattern of behavior, something our attorneys could use to strengthen our case. Armed with new insight and determination, I returned to the office to implement our revised strategy. The first component was technological, using our own security systems to track my mother's movements. "She's using a new identity, but she's still using the same smartphone," Marcus pointed out. "And she's logged into social media from it." Our company specialized in digital security, including techniques for identifying users across platforms regardless of identity changes. We deployed these tools, normally used to protect clients from fraud, to pinpoint my mother's exact location and movements. Within hours, we had confirmation. She was still in Puerto Rico, but had booked a private charter to Grand Cayman for the following day. The legal team worked through the night preparing comprehensive documentation for courts in both Puerto Rico and the Cayman Islands. Rather than seeking broad freezing orders, we targeted specific actions we knew she was planning to take. Simultaneously, I arranged a confidential meeting with the Tanaka Group representatives who were still in San Francisco. Instead of just damage control, I took a bold approach. "This situation has actually demonstrated something valuable," I told them, opening my laptop to show a secure dashboard. "This is our real-time incident response system, the same one we've been using to track and counter the attack on our company. It's a practical demonstration of exactly what we promised your financial institutions." Rather than being repelled by our troubles, the Japanese team was intrigued by seeing our security solutions working in a real crisis. They asked detailed questions about our response protocols and seemed impressed by the sophistication of our tracking systems. By the end of the meeting, they had not only recommitted to our original deal, but expressed interest in additional security consulting services. While this was happening, we discovered something critical. My mother had stolen more than just money. Our intellectual property audit revealed that specific technical documentation about our proprietary encryption systems had been accessed and downloaded in the weeks before the theft. This escalated the situation from financial crime to potential corporate espionage, a much more serious legal matter that gave us additional leverage with law enforcement agencies. Our recovery strategy continued to evolve. Using information from Linda's flash drive, we identified a weakness in James's methodology. He repeatedly used variations of the same shell company structures across different clients. This pattern recognition allowed us to predict likely destinations for the remaining funds. I made a risky but calculated decision to confront James directly, not in person, but through a carefully crafted email. We've identified all 14 shell companies in your network, including the 3 you haven't yet utilized for this operation. The FBI's Financial Crimes Unit has been provided with complete documentation. As the technical implementer of this scheme, you face significantly higher penalties than my mother. She's the client. You're the expert who facilitated the crime. It was a bluff, but a credible one based on the patterns we'd identified. The goal wasn't just to frighten him, but to plant seeds of doubt about my mother's reliability as a partner. I included just enough specific details about accounts and transfers to demonstrate our knowledge without revealing exactly how much we'd discovered. The gambit worked better than I could have hoped. Within hours of sending the email, James called our legal team, asking to discuss possible resolution options. He's willing to provide full documentation of the transfer chain in exchange for consideration in any criminal proceedings, Vivian reported after the call. He claims your mother misrepresented the situation, telling him the money was legitimately hers from a company restructuring. It was the break we needed. With James's cooperation, we could track and potentially recover a significant portion of the stolen funds. More importantly, his testimony would be crucial in any criminal case against my mother. I arranged to meet James the following morning with our legal team. Before he arrived, I prepared thoroughly, reviewing everything we knew about him and his relationship with my mother. The meeting was tense but productive. James was clearly terrified of potential criminal charges and eager to distance himself from what he now realized was outright theft. Diana told me she was a primary owner of the company and was simply moving her rightful assets during a dispute, he claimed, not meeting my eyes. I had no idea she was stealing from her own father and daughter. Whether I believed him was irrelevant. His cooperation was what mattered. By the end of our 4-hour meeting, he had provided access to his records, including the complete trail of the stolen funds through various accounts and shell companies. Armed with this information, our legal team secured the freezing orders we needed, catching several accounts before the funds could be moved again. In total, we managed to lock down approximately $3.1 million of the original $4.2 million, a significant victory, though not a complete recovery. The company's immediate financial crisis began to ease. With the Tanaka deal back on track and a clear path to recovering most of the stolen funds, we could focus on rebuilding stability and confidence. I worked with our executive team to develop a comprehensive communication strategy, first with our employees, then with key clients, and finally with the broader market. We positioned the incident as a sophisticated attack that ultimately demonstrated the strength of our security systems and incident response capabilities. Internally, the atmosphere shifted from crisis to determined recovery. Staff who had been anxiously updating their resumes now threw themselves into rebuilding projects. The engineering team worked around the clock to enhance our security protocols, using lessons learned from the breach. Throughout this period, I maintained a punishing schedule, often working 20-hour days. What sustained me wasn't just determination, but the inspiring response from our team. People voluntarily stayed late, brought solutions rather than problems, and supported each other through the challenges. 11 days after discovering the theft, we received confirmation from our bank that the first recovery transfer had been completed, $1.2 million returned to our accounts from frozen assets. It wasn't the full amount, but it was enough to ensure we could meet all immediate obligations, including the upcoming payroll. The recovery was far from complete, but for the first time since this ordeal began, I allowed myself to believe we would not just survive but emerge stronger. My mother, meanwhile, was still unaware that her plan was unraveling. According to our tracking, she had landed in Grand Cayman and checked into an oceanfront resort, presumably preparing to access the accounts we had now frozen. The stage was set for the final confrontation. The morning my mother planned to leave Grand Cayman, I was waiting for her at Owen Roberts International Airport. Not alone, I was accompanied by our legal team, local police, and representatives from the Financial Crimes Unit who had jurisdiction over the frozen accounts. Her face when she saw me standing in the private terminal will stay with me forever. First confusion, then shock, and finally a cold fury that confirmed everything I needed to know about her character. "How did you find me?" she demanded, clutching her designer handbag as if I might snatch it. "Did you really think I wouldn't?" I replied calmly. "Technology is our business, after all." The legal team stepped forward, presenting her with court orders freezing the accounts and a warrant for her arrest on charges of grand theft and fraud. "This is absurd," she sputtered, looking around desperately for an escape route. "That money is rightfully mine. Harold promised me." "Save it for your lawyer," I interrupted. "We have your communications with James. We know this was planned for over a year. And we know about the falsified medical emergency." As the reality of her situation sank in, her demeanor changed. The defiance crumbled, replaced by calculation. She requested a moment to speak with me privately before the officers took her into custody. Against my better judgment, I agreed, though I made sure we remained in full view of the authorities. "You don't want to do this, Amanda," she said, her voice suddenly soft, almost maternal. "Think about the scandal. Your grandfather's reputation. The company's image. We could make a deal. I'll return most of the money if you drop the charges." "Too late for that," I replied. "The accounts are already frozen. And as for scandal, we've already weathered that storm. The company is stronger than ever." "I'm your mother," she tried, her final card. A mother doesn't abandon her child for 28 years and then try to destroy everything that child has worked for, I said, surprising myself with how little emotion I felt. "You're just someone who made a very bad decision and now has to face the consequences." As she was led away, I felt no triumph, no vindication, just a weary relief that this chapter was closing. The legal proceedings moved surprisingly quickly after that. Faced with overwhelming evidence and James's testimony, my mother agreed to a plea deal that included full financial restitution and a 5-year prison sentence. I could have pushed for more. The prosecutors believed they could secure a 10-year sentence given the amount stolen and the deliberate planning involved. But extending her punishment wouldn't restore what had been damaged. 5 years seemed sufficient consequences for her actions. Back in San Francisco, the company's recovery accelerated. The final court orders secured the return of $3.8 million of the original $4.2 million. The remaining amount had been spent on my mother's luxury accommodations and the private charter flights. The Tanaka deal closed successfully, with improved terms that actually expanded our service agreement to include additional Japanese financial institutions. Mr. Tanaka himself commented that our handling of the crisis had demonstrated exactly the kind of resilience and problem-solving they wanted in a security partner. 3 weeks after my mother's arrest, Grandpa called a company-wide meeting. Though he had remained somewhat in the background during the recovery phase, focusing on his health as I'd insisted, he wanted to address the staff personally. "Some of you have been with JSS since the early days," he began, his voice strong despite the ordeal. "You've seen us grow from a small operation to a leader in our industry. But I don't think we've ever faced a test like this one, or responded with such courage and innovation." He paused, looking around the room at the assembled employees. "Today, I'm announcing my official retirement as CEO of Jenkins Security Solutions. From this moment forward, Amanda Jenkins will lead this company, not as interim CEO, but as the permanent chief executive and majority shareholder." The announcement was met with a standing ovation that brought tears to my eyes. These people had stood by us through the darkest days, and now they were celebrating a new beginning. In my first official act as CEO, I announced a company-wide bonus payment from the recovered funds, acknowledging the extraordinary efforts of our team during the crisis. I also implemented a profit-sharing program for all employees, something Grandpa and I had discussed for years, but never quite gotten around to implementing. This company isn't just about security systems or client contracts, I told them. It's about people who believe in protecting what matters. You protected this company when it was under attack. Now the company will protect your future in return. The months that followed brought significant changes. We completely rebuilt our internal security protocols, using the painful lessons from the breach to create more robust systems. Ironically, this experience became a powerful case study that we now use with clients, demonstrating real-world incident response. My relationship with Grandpa evolved as well. Though he had stepped back from day-to-day operations, he remained my most trusted advisor. Our Sunday dinners became a cherished tradition, a time to discuss both business and the more personal lessons from our ordeal. I still struggle with it sometimes, he admitted one evening. Not just Diana's betrayal, but wondering where I went wrong as a father. You didn't, I assured him. Some people make their own choices regardless of how they're raised or what opportunities they're given. But you got it right the second time around. He smiled at that, understanding my meaning, that in raising me, he had created a legacy far more valuable than any company. 6 months after the crisis, JSS's valuation had increased by 22% above our pre-theft levels. The Tanaka contract had opened doors throughout the Asian market, and our enhanced security offerings, developed in response to our own experience, were attracting clients who had previously worked with much larger firms. On the anniversary of my Tokyo trip, I moved into a new office, the one that had been Grandpa's for so many years. As I arranged my things, I placed his photo prominently on the desk, a reminder of where we'd started and how far we'd come. My mother still writes occasionally from prison. I read the letters but rarely respond. Perhaps someday there will be room for some kind of relationship, but that bridge, if it ever gets built, is far in the future. What I know now with absolute certainty is that a company built on integrity can withstand even the most personal betrayals. And that when faced with seemingly impossible challenges, the strength of your team and the clarity of your purpose matter more than any amount of money. If you're facing your own betrayal or seemingly impossible situation right now, remember that the darkest moments often reveal strengths you never knew you had. Sometimes you have to lose almost everything to discover what can never be taken from you. What's the most challenging betrayal you've ever faced? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. If this journey resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that recovery is possible even after the deepest betrayal. Thank you for coming along on this difficult, but ultimately triumphant chapter of my life. Remember, it's not about how hard you fall, it's about how determinedly you rise.